The wind howled through the ancient oak trees, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. Jake, Emily, Chris, and Laura, a group of history enthusiasts, arrived in San Antonio, Texas, with an itinerary full of historical sites. Their main attraction was the Alamo, a place steeped in history and lore. Stories of ghostly apparitions and the restless spirits of fallen soldiers intrigued them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the historic site, an unsettling silence enveloped the Alamo. They were unaware of the darkness that awaited them, hidden in the very stones of the old mission. As they approached the Alamo, Jake thought he saw a shadow move across one of the upper windows, but when he looked again it was gone. Probably just a trick of the light, he muttered to himself. The group gathered at the entrance, ready for their nighttime tour of the historic site. The tour guide, an elderly man with a solemn expression, welcomed them with a warning: respect the spirits of the Alamo. They do not take kindly to those who mock their sacrifice. As they toured the grounds, the usual sounds of the bustling city seemed distant, replaced by an eerie stillness. Emily's flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Just the calm before the storm, Chris joked, but his voice lacked conviction. The group huddled closer together as they entered the long barracks, a place where many soldiers had met their end. The distant sound of marching boots echoed through the halls, sending chills down their spines. They tried to shake off the growing sense of dread, attributing the sounds to old building acoustics. Suddenly Laura froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. A faint, mournful cry echoed through the halls, growing louder with each passing second. "It's just the wind," Jake said, trying to sound confident. But the fear in his eyes was evident. The group moved quickly through the barracks, their nervous laughter masking the fear that had settled in their hearts. As midnight approached, a cold wind swept through the courtyard, causing the torches to sputter and cast eerie shadows. Emily's flashlight flickered and went out completely. "Great, just what we need," she muttered, fumbling for a spare battery. Chris felt a chill run down his spine as he heard a faint whisper in his ear, "Why have you come here?" He spun around, but there was no one there. Panic set in as he realized the voice was not from any of his friends. The group huddled together, their breaths visible in the cold night air. Laura pointed towards the chapel, her hand shaking. "Look," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They saw a pale figure standing just inside the doorway, its hollow eyes staring at them. "We need to leave," Chris said, his voice trembling. But as they turned to go, the figure began to move towards them, its form becoming more solid and menacing with each step. The group sprinted towards the exit, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The ghostly figure glided effortlessly behind them, its hollow eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "Don't look back!" Jake screamed, but it was too late. Emily glanced over her shoulder and froze in terror. The figure reached out, its touch icy cold, and she felt a searing pain in her chest. Jake and Chris grabbed her arms, pulling her along as they ran. They burst into the courtyard, their hearts pounding in their chests. The figure appeared at the edge of the courtyard, its eyes glowing brighter. "You cannot escape," it said, its voice a mournful wail that seemed to pierce their very souls. Desperation set in as they realized they were trapped. "We have to fight it," Laura said, grabbing a nearby torch. The others followed suit, brandishing their makeshift weapons. The figure shrieked, a sound that pierced their ears and sent waves of pain through their heads. They advanced, pushing the figure back towards the chapel. It writhed and twisted in the torchlight, its form becoming more distorted and grotesque. "We need to banish it," Chris said, his voice firm with determination. They formed a circle around the figure, chanting an old prayer they had read in the Alamo's archives. As they chanted, the figure's wails grew louder, more desperate. It thrashed against their combined will, but slowly, its form began to dissolve into mist. The wind howled through the courtyard, carrying away the remnants of the spirit. The group collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. "Did we do it?" Laura asked, her voice shaking. They didn't have time to answer. The first light of dawn broke through the trees, casting the Alamo in a soft, golden glow. They had survived the night, but the memory of the ghostly figure and its mournful wail would haunt them forever. As they packed up their gear, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched. The ghosts of the Alamo had left their mark on them, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows of history. The dense canopy of the jungle obscured the moonlight, casting an almost impenetrable darkness. Ethan's heart pounded as he navigated the overgrown path, clutching the torn map he had found among his brother Sam's belongings. Sam had gone missing 3 weeks ago while exploring this very jungle, and Ethan was determined to find him. The local legend spoke of a cursed shop hidden deep within the jungle, a place where malevolent spirits were said to dwell. Despite the villagers' warnings, Ethan's desperation outweighed his fear. He had to uncover the truth and bring his brother home. As Ethan ventured deeper into the shadows, the silence grew oppressive, broken only by the distant cries of nocturnal creatures. The air was thick with humidity, and the scent of decaying vegetation filled his nostrils. The twisted trees and tangled vines seemed to close in around him, creating a claustrophobic tunnel of darkness. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs set his nerves on edge. He knew the cursed shop was near, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The path led him to a clearing where the shop stood, its decrepit structure barely visible through the overgrowth. The windows were boarded up and the door hung ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. The sight of the shop sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. He approached cautiously, his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the weathered walls. As he stepped inside, the floor creaked beneath his weight and the air grew colder. The oppressive silence was replaced by an almost palpable sense of malevolence. Ethan knew he was not alone in the cursed shop, and the real horror of his quest was just beginning. Ethan's flashlight flickered as he pushed through the thick underbrush, revealing the decrepit building that seemed to materialize from the shadows. The shop's windows were boarded up, and the door hung ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. He hesitated, recalling the villagers' stories of ghostly apparitions and malevolent spirits. Summoning his courage, he stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath his weight. The air was thick with the scent of decay and mildew. Ethan's heart pounded as he scanned the dim interior, catching glimpses of broken shelves and dusty relics. A cold breeze brushed past him and he spun around, convinced he wasn't alone. The silence within the shop was almost deafening, amplifying every sound Ethan made. His footsteps echoed as he cautiously explored the space, his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the weathered walls. He noticed old, faded signs advertising long-forgotten goods and empty display cases covered in a thick layer of dust. The deeper he ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if the very air was charged with malevolence. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. He turned quickly, but there was nothing there. "Just my imagination," he muttered, trying to steady his nerves. But the feeling of being watched persisted, growing stronger with each passing moment. As he moved further into the shop, the temperature seemed to drop, and a chill ran down his spine. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper reached his ears. It sounded like someone calling his name. "Ethan?" The voice was distant but unmistakable. His heart raced as he turned in the direction of the sound. There, in the corner of the room, he saw a shadowy figure. The figure was translucent, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into his soul. Ethan's instinct was to run, but his legs felt like lead. He stood frozen, unable to tear his gaze away from the ghostly apparition that watched him from the darkness. As Ethan cautiously approached the shadowy figure, his flashlight flickered, plunging him into near darkness. His pulse quickened and he fumbled to steady the light. When the beam finally steadied, the figure was gone, leaving only an unsettling silence in its wake. Ethan's mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just seen. He remembered the villagers' warnings about the haunted shop and the spirits that roamed its decaying halls. Determined to find answers, he pressed on, each step weighed down by a growing sense of dread. He noticed an old, dusty journal on the counter, its pages yellowed with age. With trembling hands, he opened it and began to read. The journal belonged to the shop's previous owner, who had documented strange occurrences and supernatural phenomena. It detailed a curse that had plagued the shop for decades, trapping the souls of those who entered. Ethan's eyes widened as he read about the malevolent spirits that roamed the halls, seeking to ensnare the living. As he turned the pages, he found a chilling entry about a ritual to break the curse. The instructions were cryptic, mentioning a specific relic hidden within the shop and a series of incantations. Just as he was trying to decipher the ritual, a cold breeze brushed past him, sending shivers down his spine. He looked up to see the same ghostly figure standing at the far end of the room, its hollow eyes fixed on him. The figure slowly moved closer, its ethereal form gliding silently over the floor. Ethan's heart pounded as he backed away, clutching the journal tightly. He felt a cold, malevolent presence enveloping him, and the air grew thick with the scent of decay. The ghostly figure extended a translucent hand towards him, and he could feel a chill seeping into his bones. Overwhelmed by fear, Ethan stumbled backward, knocking over a shelf of dusty relics. He scrambled to his feet, his mind racing with the realization that he had to find the relic and perform the ritual to break the curse. The true horror of the haunted jungle was beginning to unfold, and Ethan knew he had to act quickly before it consumed him. Panic set in as Ethan scrambled to his feet and bolted towards the door. The ghostly figure pursued him, its mournful wails echoing through the shop. He reached the entrance and pulled at the door, but it refused to budge. Desperation clawed at him as he searched for another way out. He spotted a narrow staircase leading to the basement and dashed down, hoping to find an exit. The basement was even darker and more foreboding, with strange markings on the walls and a sense of impending doom. The ghostly wails grew louder, and Ethan realized he had to confront the spirit to escape. The basement was a labyrinth of old storage rooms and forgotten relics. As Ethan navigated the narrow corridors, his flashlight flickered again, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay, making it difficult to breathe. Ethan's heart pounded as he felt the presence of the spirit closing in on him. He knew he couldn't outrun it forever. In the corner of one of the storage rooms, Ethan noticed a small locked chest covered in dust and cobwebs. He remembered the journal's mention of a relic hidden within the shop and hoped this chest held the key to breaking the curse. With trembling hands, he pried the chest open, revealing a small, intricately carved box. The box seemed to pulse with dark energy, and Ethan felt a wave of dread wash over him as he held it. Suddenly, the ghostly figure materialized in front of him, its hollow eyes fixed on the box in his hands. Ethan knew he had to act quickly. He recalled the incantation from the journal and began to recite it, his voice trembling with fear. The spirit's wails grew louder, and the air around him seemed to thicken. As he continued the incantation, the box grew warmer in his hands, and he felt a surge of power emanating from it. The spirit lunged at him, but Ethan held the box tightly, determined to break the curse and escape the haunted shop. In the dimly lit basement, Ethan came face to face with the spirit once more. It floated towards him, its hollow eyes filled with sorrow and malevolence. Desperation gave way to determination as Ethan recalled the passage from the journal about breaking the curse. He had to find a specific relic hidden within the shop and destroy it to free himself and any other trapped souls. As the spirit lunged at him, Ethan dodged and began searching the basement frantically, his flashlight casting erratic beams of light. His hands shook as he rummaged through the clutter, knocking over old boxes and cobweb-covered furniture. The spirit's presence grew stronger, its cold breath sending chills down his spine. Ethan's heart raced as he overturned a dusty trunk and found a small, intricately carved box. The box seemed to emanate a dark energy, and he knew it was the key to breaking the curse. The spirit's wails grew louder, almost deafening as Ethan held the box in his trembling hands. He recalled the incantation from the journal and began to recite it, his voice barely audible over the ghostly cries. The air around him seemed to thicken, and the temperature dropped even further. The spirit reached out with its translucent hand, trying to grab the box from him. Ethan's resolve hardened, and he clutched the box tightly, determined to see the ritual through. As he continued the incantation, the box grew warmer in his hands, and a surge of power coursed through him. The spirit shrieked in agony, its form becoming more distorted and grotesque. Ethan felt a wave of nausea wash over him as the box pulsed with dark energy. He knew he was close to breaking the curse, but he had to stay focused. The final words of the incantation echoed through the basement, and the box glowed with an intense light. The spirit's wails reached a fever pitch, and Ethan braced himself for the final confrontation. The basement seemed to shudder as Ethan completed the incantation. The ghostly figure shrieked and writhed, its form dissolving into a swirling mist. The box in Ethan's hands glowed brightly before shattering into pieces, releasing a surge of energy that knocked him off his feet. As he lay on the cold, damp floor, he felt a strange calm settle over the room. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the scent of decay began to dissipate. Ethan knew he had broken the curse, but he was drained and exhausted. He struggled to his feet, his body aching from the ordeal. The spirit was gone, and the basement was eerily quiet. Ethan made his way back up the stairs, his legs trembling with each step. He reached the ground floor and took a deep breath, relieved to finally be free of the haunted shop's grasp. But as he prepared to leave, a nagging sense of unease lingered. The curse had been broken, but at what cost? With the incantation complete, Ethan felt the box shatter in his hands, releasing a surge of energy that reverberated through the basement. The spirit's cries ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. But a cold dread settled in Ethan's chest as he remembered the journal's warning about a personal sacrifice. The price for breaking the curse had to be paid. As the blinding light faded, Ethan felt a strange detachment from his surroundings. He looked down to see his own body lying lifeless on the cold floor, a ghostly replica of himself. Realization struck him like a hammer. He had become a spirit just like those he had sought to free. His soul had been claimed in exchange for breaking the curse. Ethan's new reality began to set in. He was now bound to the very jungle he had sought to escape, a spectral guardian of the cursed shop. He wandered through the overgrown paths, watching as the jungle slowly reclaimed the building. Ethan's existence had been transformed into an eternal penance, a haunting reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. The curse had been broken, but its legacy lived on through him. Ethan's spirit wandered the jungle, bound to the cursed shop. He watched as time passed and the jungle reclaimed the shop, hiding it from prying eyes. Occasionally, he sensed the presence of others who dared to enter, drawn by the same curiosity that had led him here. He knew he had to protect them from the curse's grip and warn them of the dangers within. As the new guardian of the cursed shop, Ethan's eternal vigilance became both his penance and his purpose. The legend of the haunted jungle lived on, and those who ventured too close could still hear his mournful whispers in the night. The curse had been broken, but its legacy endured through Ethan's spectral watch, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows of forgotten places.